All right. Happy Wednesday morning, everybody. It's about 11 a.m. West Coast time, the day before Thanksgiving. Getting ready to do some traveling today. Got a little road trip ahead of me with the pups. But there were a few quick little news things that I wanted to cover real quick, mainly just so I can get them out of my head. If I don't, yeah, okay. Mexican says tariffs will hammer U.S. economy. Mexico says their economic advisors are advising that Donald Trump's threat of 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada would cost the U.S. economy as many as 400,000 jobs, American jobs, and would raise prices for American consumers dramatically. Wow, if only somebody had said something about the consequences of that before the election. MSNBC has lost nearly half of its audience since election night. It's down by 47% overall since November 5th and 52% during prime time. Yikes. Joe Rogan on his podcast yesterday, I think he was interviewing Mark Andreessen, marveled at Democrats purportedly scrambling to create their own equivalent of his show to counter a perceived right-wing manosphere, saying he was once on their side. Democrats, said Rogan, I'm sure they're scrambling to try to create their own version of this show. This is one thing that keeps coming up. We need our own Joe Rogan. But they had me. I was on their side. Joe Rogan platforms terrible people sometimes. He platforms amazing people sometimes. And I keep coming back to in 2016, and I stopped listening to Joe Rogan. I mean, I only listen to him once or twice a week, depending on who his guests were. But when COVID hit, COVID broke his brain. COVID broke his brain, along with many other people. But in 2016, he had Bernie Sanders on his podcast when Bernie was running against Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primaries, and he almost beat her. And I listened to that episode. They had a great conversation. And then Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. And then everybody on the far left tried to cancel Bernie Sanders for appearing on the Joe Rogan show. Not because of anything he said during that interview, but solely because he appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast. So our fun with the far left tone and subject matter police has a long and storied history. And of the many lessons to be learned in this election, I don't think that Democrats are going to learn any of them. But that's just me. Everybody who's benefiting from Joe Biden's student debt relief, who voted for Donald Trump, he's bringing back your student loan payments. He is going to pull the plug on Biden's years-long push to cancel student loan debt for tens of millions of people. And he's going to cancel everything that Joe Biden did in that regard. And so if you voted for Donald Trump and Joe Biden did away with your student loans, Donald Trump is reinstating your student loan payments. Great work. Elon Musk is calling for the elimination of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is a governmental agency that stands up for consumers in fights against banks, airlines, corporations, financial institutions, and puts the power of the federal government behind consumers in fighting against those entities that take advantage of consumers. Elon Musk wants to do away with that, as do most Republicans. So Trump voters voted for that as well. Revenge of the COVID contrarians. COVID hoaxers, anti-vaxxers, they're angry at the public health establishment. Now they're in control of it. Great work on that one too. Quote of the day, speaking of who's going to be running the public health establishment, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said in an interview with the Daily Beast about when he was in college, I was at the bottom of my class, so I started using heroin, and then I went to the top of my class. Suddenly I could sit still, I could read, I could concentrate, I could listen to what people were saying. So Our new Secretary of Health for the United States thinks that heroin is amazing in academic circumstances. So good luck trying to tell your kids that drugs are bad now. House Republicans are going to have a 1-seat majority. If the current leads hold, and I've talked about this a bunch, House Republicans are going to have a 220 to 215 margin in the House of Representatives. You need 218 to have a majority. Donald Trump has taken 3 of those 220 representatives for his cabinet. So the House of Representatives is going to start off with Republicans in control with a 217 to 215 margin. They don't even have an actual majority of 218. There will be 3 special elections coming in the next 6 months. If Democrats win all 3 of those special elections, they'll take control of Congress. But, you know, who's putting any faith in that? Trump gets a boost in favorability. His favorability rating has gone up 6 points since Election Day to 54%. I think it's the first time he's ever been over 50%. He now has the highest favorability rating he has ever had. Donald Trump was recently caught on camera at his golf course in Palm Beach, Florida, offering a young girl millions of dollars to buy her hair, the hair on her head. 54% approval rating. Moderation is not the same as surrender. Jonathan Chait writes a good article. Well, a very thought-provoking article. Before this month's elections, when Democratic candidates were being attacked for letting transgender athletes compete in girls' sports, trans rights activists and their allies had a confident answer. They had nothing to fear because anti-trans themes were a consistent loser for Republicans. That position became impossible to maintain after the elections when detailed research showed that the issue had done tremendous damage to Kamala Harris and other Democrats. In fact, the 3rd most common reason swing voters and late deciders in one survey gave for opposing Kamala Harris is that she's focused more on cultural issues like transgender issues rather than helping the middle class. So Donald Trump's ad campaign that Kamala Harris is about they and them and Donald Trump is about you was effective. An impression these voters no doubt got from endless ads showing her endorsing free transgender surgery for prisoners and detained migrants. Now, some of the very people who pushed Democrats into adopting these politically toxic positions have shifted to a new line. Abandoning any element of the trans rights agenda would be morally unthinkable, is their new position. Refusing to accommodate the electorate is a legitimate choice when politicians believe they are defending a principle so foundational that defeat is preferable to compromise. I mean, is there any better definition than the Democratic Party? We'd rather lose than compromise. But in this case, the no compromise stance is premised on a fundamental misunderstanding of the options on the table. Democrats do not, in fact, face a choice between championing trans rights or abandoning them entirely. There is a middle ground, and the Democratic Party should find that. Representative Seth Moulton drew swift condemnation from local Democratic leaders and LGBTQ advocates for comments he made about transgender youth in sports in the wake of Democrats' defeat earlier this month. But will the discontent translate to a real competition in his race next cycle? Who knows? Let's close it out with something funny. Podcaster Joe Rogan reacted Wednesday to Australian Broadcasting Corporation Chairman Kim Williams, who torched Rogan's podcast as a repulsive rabbit hole of conspiracies. Kim Williams ripped into Rogan, calling his show repulsive, accusing the comedian of preying on people's vulnerabilities. He said, "I'm not sure I'm the right person to respond to that question. I'm not a consumer or an enthusiast of Mr. Rogan's work. I think people like Mr. Rogan prey on people's vulnerabilities. They prey on fear. They prey on anxiety. They prey on all the elements that contribute to uncertainty in society, and the entrepreneur fantasy outcomes and conspiracy outcomes as being a normal part of the social narrative. I personally find it deeply repulsive, and to think that someone has such remarkable power in the United States is something that I look at in disbelief. I'm also absolutely in dismay that this can be a source of public entertainment when it's really treating the public as plunder for purposes that are really quite malevolent. Rogan took to Twitter on Wednesday and responded with, in all caps, LOL what? Spelled W-U-T, which I think is perfect. LOL what? Anyway, I'm going to hit the road. I'll see you guys in a few hours from the farm, and I hope everybody has an outstanding and amazing holiday. Please be safe and protect your mental health above all else. Take care.